What is up, you guys? I'm Tony Metro. Welcome to the stream. Tonight, we're going to be breaking down the latest move the Mets just made. They have signed outfielder Kevin Pillar to a major league contract. And this is coming as a surprise to not just me, but many other Mets fans. I did not think when we heard these rumors this evening that Kevin Pillar would actually be signing for a major league deal, but here we are. So I'm really in shock. I didn't think the Mets would be willing to give him a major league contract, but somehow his agent managed to get it for him. Kevin Pillar, of course, was known very well for being a tremendous defensive center fielder back in his heyday. But over the last years, his numbers have slumped out there. He's not quite as springy of a step as he used to be, scaling the walls of the Rogers Center in Toronto for the Blue Jays. So I really didn't think he'd get a major league contract. I mean, he hadn't at this point yet. So I was really shocked to hear that that was the case. And there's a few reasons why I'm actually upset about it and why I'm streaming right now, because basically the Mets are now locked in to a position on their roster for Kevin Pillar. He's guaranteed to play on the team unless they decide to cut him. They could try to give him a minor league assignment, in which case he can refuse it and opt to free agency, which wouldn't really matter to the Mets, I mean, unless he's performing well. But in that case, they wouldn't cut him anyway. I'm just really surprised because they just signed Albert Almora Jr., who has an option and can be moved to the minor leagues and can't refuse an assignment. So I really didn't think that Kevin Pillar was anywhere on the Mets' radar at this point in the offseason. I'm more so upset because of the other news in the last couple of days where the Mets have missed out on some potential free agent targets. Mark Melancon signed with the Padres. Just today, the Mets were rumored to be deep in negotiations with Justin Wilson, and of course, he went to the Yankees. And this all coming on the heels of Seth Lugo just having surgery and is likely to miss the first month, if not 2 months, of the season. I think the Mets are deficient in the bullpen, and it would probably benefit them to try and get some help for that bullpen. And here they are signing Kevin Pillar, who, like I said, his defensive numbers in center field have not been that great over the last few years. His bat is not something he was ever known for. He has a little bit of pop at his best, but at this point in his career, I really don't see him that much of a difference maker. So to commit a roster spot to him really is shocking to me. I just don't really understand it, to be quite honest with you. Thank you guys for joining the stream. I appreciate it. I am Tony Metro. If you're new to my channel, be sure to leave this stream a like and subscribe to my channel. I have a new video coming out tomorrow. I give a grade for every MLB team's offseason here in 2021. Tyler Rogers, welcome, man. Great to have you. So happy to have you, man. I appreciate those kind words. Thank you very much. I am definitely trying to stay on my grind here and put as much content out as possible. If there's anything you guys want to see, please let me know in my comments on my videos and in this comment section right here on my live stream. So let's jump into Kevin Pillar's numbers over the last few years. He played with the Red Sox last year, and I believe it might have been Toronto. I'm not sure exactly. Let's check it up. He was with Boston and then got traded to Colorado. And he actually had a pretty good 2020 offensively. He hit, let's see what he did total, 288 average, 336 on base percentage, 462 slugging, almost an 800 OPS. So pretty good. Really not bad at all, honestly, but not a whole lot better than, say, Albert Almora Jr., who they, again, just signed to a minor league deal recently. He popped 6 home runs, had 26 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, struck out 41 times in 223 plate appearances. So that's pretty good. At least he's not striking out a ton. But really, I mean, the guy's pinnacle part of his career is behind him. 2019, he hit 21 home runs, 88 RBIs, pretty solid. Bounced around then, San Francisco, and then, as I mentioned, Boston and Colorado last year. But really what I want to focus on is his defensive numbers, because we all saw the defensive highlights that Kevin Pillar would make out in center field while a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. But those days are largely behind him. He really does not have that defensive prowess that he once was known for anymore in center field. He probably profiles better as a left fielder at this point, which the Mets have a glut of left fielders or guys that really shouldn't be in left field but have to go there, like Dom Smith or J.D. Davis, maybe even Jeff McNeil. So looking at his defensive numbers over the last couple of years, let's see what he did in defensive runs saved. And just to give you an example, In 2015, he played 142 games in center field and was worth 16 defensive runs saved. I mean, incredible. Really, really good. But that's not really the guy that Kevin Pillar is anymore. Just for an example now, last year in center field with the Colorado Rockies, he played in 21 games, and he would have been worth negative 29 defensive runs saved, extrapolated over an entire season. He's just 31. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why the Mets brought him in and committed a major league roster spot to him when there are other areas of need on this team right now. Let's go look at his outs above average. I know a lot of people like to use that as their metric to judge defensive players. Outs above average, Kevin Pillar. And like I said, thank you guys so much for joining the stream. I appreciate it. Tyler, hey, man, that's cool. The Braves are going to have a great team, man. I gave them a pretty good offseason grade this year. Charlie Morton, Drew Smiley, bringing back Marcell Ozuna. I mean, you guys had a great team already. I didn't think they had a lot of needs. So, I definitely see the Braves still as the better team in the NL East over the Mets. Andrew Acevedo, if you are not subbed to him, go check out his channel. He's another Mets fan, puts out some great content. Andrew, welcome to the stream. He says, probably going to be cheap outfield depth. You can never have enough and extra right-handed bat versus lefties. Yeah, I agree with that. On a minor league deal, I would have, of course, had no problem with this. But the fact that it is a major league deal, that we have to commit a roster spot to Kevin Pillar, and we still have, in my opinion, a bullpen that's up in flames. A third baseman in J.D. Davis who's worth negative 30 defensive runs saved at third base. I just don't feel this was a prudent use of the roster availability that they had. We saw Justin Wilson just today sign with the Yankees. We saw Mark Melancon sign at the end of last week with the Padres. Trevor Richardson, is it Richardson? I think it is. He's still available, or Rosenthal. I always mix them up. But he's still available. I'd love for the Mets to go sign him. Same with Taijuan Walker. He's available. The Mets could use some more starting pitching depth. And yet here we are adding another fourth outfielder when we already have Heredia, Malik Smith, Khalil Lee sitting in the minor leagues, and just added Albert Almora Jr. as well. So just personally, I don't feel like it was a good use of a roster spot for the Mets right now, considering where they are in the offseason. So let me get back to this. His outs above average last year and in the past. This one's always tough for me to figure out because I'm on Baseball Savant, and there are a ridiculous amount of numbers in front of me right now. Okay, so to give you an idea, no, wait, that's not it. Let's find it. Where is it? That's above average. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about this signing? Are you happy about it? Do you think that it was a good use of a roster spot for the Mets? While I try to find his outs above average numbers on defense. So taking a look, 2016, he was 11 outs above average. 2017, he was 0 outs above average. 2018, 2 outs above average in center field. And in 2020, he was total worth negative 2 outs above average. I mean, holy regression. That's regression right there in itself. Oscar, if you're just joining, no, man, I do not like the move. I don't think it was a good move for the Mets, and that's because we're basically giving a roster spot to a guy where I felt we were already covered in center field. I'm not super comfortable with the guys that we have there between Nimmo and also maybe some Khalil Lee throughout the season. We'd have just enough defensively to get by in center field. Meanwhile, I think the bullpen is really weak, and they need to add another arm or two, especially with Lugo going down to injury. And I'd also even like to see another starting pitcher like Taijuan Walker brought in. And here we are adding another fourth outfielder in Kevin Pillar, who has to be on the team because he's getting a major league contract. So not crazy about this deal at all. SBFM Baseball Channel. What's up, man? I'm Braves fan too. I'm sub to you. Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate the sub. I'll check your channel out after this. A lot of Braves fans on YouTube and in my streams lately. Really appreciate it, guys. I still think the Braves are the better team than the Mets. The offseason is not over. I still understand the Mets could contract. And that's mainly because, like I've said a few times already, I think the bullpen needs a lot of work. I think the rotation could use a little more depth, and I'm still not comfortable with J.D. Davis at third base. He's just a defensive liability there. We all offseason heard how the Mets were going to go out and get some of the big names. And I know they traded for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco. I know they brought back Marcus Stroman and did some other things like Trevor May and James Buchanan. I'm very happy with most of those moves. That being said, it's frustrating to see all those names like JT Realmuto, George Springer, Trevor Bauer all sign with other guys after reports are, oh, Mets are in on them, Mets are close, Mets are doing this with them, and then see them go to another team. The same can be said about all of these relievers of late. We were in on Brad Hand. We were in on Justin Wilson. We were in on all these different guys, and then they end up going to different teams. James Paxton, another example, just signed with the Mariners, I believe on Friday for $8.5 million, a very affordable deal. I would have definitely signed up for that if I were the Mets. I think any team should have. I mean, he's going to be a great trade chip for the Mariners, and I actually gave them a good grade in my recent video that I'll be posting tomorrow, where I grade every MLB team's offseason because they did pick him up and probably can flip him for some prospects. But besides the point, there's holes on this roster still that I think the Mets need to address that they may not be able to at this point in the offseason. Unfortunately, I think Sandy Alderson may have not appraised the market appropriately or accurately. I think he thought that he didn't want to pay some of these free agents the big bucks they were asking for. And I respect that because he's trying to keep in mind the luxury tax, extending guys like Francisco Lindor, Michael Conforto, and potentially Noah Syndergaard down the road. So I completely get that, not going overboard and signing guys that are not worth the value that they're asking for. But that being said, they're now in a position where the only real way they can improve at third base is via trade. And it doesn't look like there's much of a trade market right now. It doesn't seem to me like the Cubs are looking to trade Kris Bryant. I think they'd have to be absolutely overwhelmed by a trade to send him away. As for Eugenio Suarez on the Reds and Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray, same thing. I don't think they're motivated to really move those guys. If they were, they're asking for a huge price. And personally, I don't want the Mets to pay a price that's worth more than they actually are. But I do want to see something done, and not just for the sake of making a move, but because I truly do believe third base is still a big hole. So now you add in Kevin Pillar, who, is going to take one of our roster spots, who's basically now our third or fourth outfielder on the bench. I guess it moves Albert Almora to AAA for the time being, unless he somehow beats Kevin Pillar out for that roster spot, which, again, in that case, the Mets will have to release Kevin Pillar and pay his contract this season. So we don't really know the details, I don't think, yet on how much he'll be getting paid. I can't expect it to be more than $4 or $5 million. If it's anything over that, I mean, this move becomes even more of a head scratcher than I thought. Let's take a look at the comment section over here. We got Robert Mazzaracchio. I like that. Great last name, man. They're going to trade Nimmo and others for Suarez. I don't think that's happening, man. I think the Mets really value Nimmo. He's an on-base machine, and Sandy drafted him. I think he was actually Sandy's first draft pick in his first tenure with the Mets. They're not trading Brandon Nimmo, and I don't think Suarez really moves the needle. He doesn't, for me at least. I mean, guy hit 49 home runs at Great American Ballpark. I think those are inflated because it's a hitter-friendly park. I could totally see him coming to New York and being a dud, hitting only 22 homers, something like that. I mean, Citi Field is not friendly to right-handed hitters. There's that wind gust that comes in from the Bay and knocks down a lot of balls. I'm not crazy about Eugenio Suarez. If it came down to him or Kris Bryant, I'm going Kris Bryant all day. As that star pedigree, I know he hasn't really lived up to it over the last couple of years, but I'd bet on Kris Bryant in a walk year more than I would on Eugenio Suarez, who also is not a very good defensive player. Texas Rangers report by CFM. If you're not subbed to him, go check him out as well. He's got a great channel, big Rangers fan. Yeah, man, J.D. Davis is a great hitter. He doesn't have a position in the field. He really should be a DH. You can get away with him for short periods of time at third base, and I actually saw him make some strides in left field over the last 2 years, but realistically, over 162 games, he's going to be well in the double digits of negative defensive runs saved at either of those positions. I view him more as a guy kind of like Max Muncy, where you mix and match him around the field, try to disguise his defense a little bit, and just roll with his bat, because he does have 30 home run pop. It's just the defense is something that I really can't live with as a starter. Dominant package for Chapman coming from Domenico Scalacci. Wow, I got some great Italian last names in here. I like it. Okay. Yeah, you know what? If Matt Chapman's coming in a trade, I might have to part with Dom Smith, but I don't see the Mets doing that. They know the DH is coming. It may be as soon as this year, even though at this point they said no DH in the NL, but that could change when cooler heads prevail. It seems like the players and the owners want the DH universal. So I would not really be inclined to trade Dom Smith, but if you're telling me Matt Chapman is coming, all of a sudden that changes things because the Mets then all of a sudden have the best defensive lineup, best defensive infield, in my opinion, and probably the best line or one of the best lineups in baseball to boot. They'll move one of Dellin or Familia, then hopefully sign Green and Rosenthal. Yeah, Andrew, the Mets have made it known they want to trade Dellin Betances or Yuris Familia. Those two contracts are brutal, but that's the problem. No one wants to take on $11 million of Yuris Familia's contract when he really hasn't been an effective reliever over the last 2 years and the better part of 3 years. Same goes for Dellin Betances. His contract is not nearly as expensive, but didn't have a good year last year, missed some time with injury. His velo was down, and, you know, he may really be done. He may not actually be able to be an effective reliever anymore at this point in his career. He was heavily used by the Yankees in his first 5 seasons there, and I'm not too keen on Betances, and I see why other teams are not right now either. And yeah, we'll definitely get together. We need to do some work together. Like I said, Andrew Acevedo has a great channel, big Mets fan. Go check out his channel and sub him as well. Thank you guys for joining the stream. I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to leave me a like on this stream and to sub to my channel. I'm releasing a video tomorrow. I'm going to be giving a grade for every MLB team's offseason. Just to give you a hint, there's 2 teams that got an F, and there's 2 teams that got an A. So I think you could probably guess who those 4 teams are. The 2 that got Fs, it's pretty obvious why. The 2 teams that got As, pretty obvious why also. So let me know who you guys think those teams are in this comment section right over here, and be on the lookout for that video. I'll be dropping it around noon Eastern time tomorrow. So what do we got going on in the chat here? Suarez will be like a J. Bell comes to New York and does nothing. Who are we talking about here? Bell. Who's Bell? Oh, Jay Bell? Jay Bell. Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Some former guys, yeah. If the DH is added, what type of market do you think there will be for guys like Chris Davis, Ryan Braun? Well, Ryan Braun is still a free agent, hasn't gotten any looks. I've not really seen his numbers from last year. I don't think they were too pretty. I definitely could see him getting signed by a team if there's a universal DH, though. As for Chris Davis, I'm not sure. You know, I actually am very confused about that trade, and I talk about it in this new video coming out tomorrow. It seemed like a lateral move for both the Athletics and for the Rangers to do Chris Davis for Elvis Andrus. They're both guys that are kind of like home run or bust. They strike out a lot, low average, low OBP. I really didn't, love that trade for either team. I guess it's kind of a wash in the end. But yeah, no, that was a weird one for me. Actually, SBFM, you're on to something. I actually had 3 teams with an A, and I think you got 2 of them at least. And you're pretty close. I don't want to reveal too much, but you're very close with your predictions right there. So keep on the lookout for that video tomorrow. Let's get back to Kevin Pillar. Just talk about him. I'm going to go for about another 10 or 15 minutes. Honestly, I was in the car. I was ranting to myself, and I said, I got to come on a stream and share these thoughts with you guys because it really doesn't make any sense to give Kevin Pillar this major league contract, guarantee him a roster spot when they just signed Albert Almora Jr. So for reference, let's go look at Albert Almora Jr.'s numbers in center field over the last couple of years and see how they compare to Pillar. I guess it makes sense if you're looking at it from the standpoint that Albert Almora can be sent to the minor leagues. He'll have to take the assignment. They also don't forget, have Jose Martinez, who they signed to a 2-way contract. He also can be sent to the minor leagues at any time and be brought back up. He's not a defensive guy that, he's more going to be a bat off the bench to hit against left-handed pitchers. But nonetheless, it seems like the Mets have a glut of outfielders right now, none who are particularly well-versed in center field, and they still have other holes on the roster, including the bullpen. They could probably use some more starting pitching depth, And third base right now is still up in the air, if you ask me. I just am not a believer in J.D. Davis as an everyday third baseman. Seen him boot balls over there. So I'm going to check out Albert Almora Jr.'s numbers right now on Baseball Savant and on Baseball Reference and see how he grades out for outs above average and then for defensive runs saved. So bear with me for a second here while I get this up. And thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate it. Be sure to leave me a like, subscribe to the channel. New videos coming out. I'm trying to do at least 2 per week. I've been pretty busy with a lot of other life stuff and work. So a little slow lately, but appreciate you guys taking the ride with me tonight. So Albert Almora Jr. on Baseball Reference. Let's take a look at his defensive numbers. Well, first of all, actually, let's look at his slash line from 2020. Not a good year. 167, 265, 200 slugging percentage. Really, really bad. 2019, a full season, the one where I'm measuring people more so just because last year was such a weird season. Almora, 236 average, 271 OBP, 381 slugging. Not good numbers. Really hasn't been the same since that one incident a few years ago where he hit the little girl with the foul ball. And, I don't know if it relates to it or not. Some people like to say it does. But in any case, yeah, he looked like a promising player. Hasn't really blossomed into that the way they had expected in Chicago. So now taking a look at his numbers in center field. In 2018, he was worth 13 defensive runs saved in center field for the Cubs over 137 games. Really good numbers, comparable to what Pilar was doing in 2016, 2015 with the Blue Jays. Going into 2019, however, in center field was worth 0 defensive runs saved, which not bad, but it's actually better than what Pilar did in 2020 in center field as far as defensive runs saved. Taking a look now at his out above average. Let's go take a look there on Baseball Savant. No, SBFM, man, you're like on the money with your predictions. I don't want to reveal it because I want you guys to watch the video and enjoy it. But you're on the money with your predictions right there, bro. Hob, in a vacuum, yes, I don't think bringing Kevin Pilar in is a bad move. I think the fact, though, that he's getting a major league roster spot and the fact that the Mets still need to fill out some spots in their bullpen and at third base, that's my issue with the signing. That's why I don't think it's a good deal. Mets Talk with Hayden. What's up, man? Another YouTuber. Check out his channel, guys. He's a great channel. Another big Mets fan. So looking at Albert Almora's outs above average, let's get it here. So in 2016, he was 3 above average. No, I think I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Sorry, guys. All right, here we go. 2018, he was 10 outs above average. 2019, he was 3 outs above average. And 2020, 0 outs above average. So to be honest, it sounds like both Kevin Pilar and Albert Almora Jr. are regressing in center field. It just sounds like Albert Almora Jr. is less into the decline than Kevin Pilar is. So to me personally, I just don't understand why you're guaranteeing Kevin Pilar a major league roster spot, but meanwhile, you're going to have Albert Almora probably sitting in AAA. Especially when we just let Justin Wilson walk to the Yankees. We let Brad Hand go to the Nationals. Trevor Richardson is still available to be signed, and now one of those spots is gone. That means that you're going to have to cut a different guy because you're not going to cut Kevin Pilar, who you just signed tonight. It's going to mean someone like Robert Gesellman, who I actually think should have been gone 5 years ago, but he has options and can be sent to AAA. So that's kind of why Brad Brock was designated for assignment recently instead of Gesellman, because Gesellman can be stashed in AAA. Now, if the Mets want to bring in another reliever, or if they want to bring in Taijuan Walker, or if they do somehow acquire a third baseman like Chris Bryant, Suarez, or Chapman, they're going to have to get rid of somebody else on this 40-man roster right now. So that's where my issue lies with this signing tonight. Mets Talk with Hayden. Do you think Thomas Szapucki will be caught up this season? And so what would the rotation look like? I do see Szapucki getting some major league time on the team this year. I don't think he'll enter the rotation unless they've exhausted all of their options. I think they'll first try to go to Jordan Yamamoto. They'll possibly start the season with Joey Lucchesi in the rotation. But if not, I think he'd be the next man up. And then they also have one or two other guys who kind of escape me right now. I believe Trevor Richardson or Rosenthal. Like I said, I get their names mixed up, but the guy signed from the Rays earlier this offseason. I think he'd be the next man up. And then Thomas Szapucki. Szapucki has not pitched in a real game in over 2 years now. He had Tommy John surgery about 3 years ago. Then he had back issues in 2019. So he really hasn't pitched in a real game right now. He's going to have to get stretched out, and I don't think they're going to rush him. If he does make an appearance with this team, I think it'll be out of the bullpen as a left-handed specialist, should they need that down the road. More signings from Marshals. I thought Cohen shopped at Neiman Marcus. Yeah, man, that's the thing. And I started the stream by saying, I am happy the Mets have made moves. I didn't expect them to sign every big free agent or trade for every big name. That's not realistic. The Mets want to create a sustainable winner. They're looking at this offseason with an eye toward the future, where they're going to have to extend some guys like Lindor and Michael Conforto, maybe Noah Syndergaard, and spending big bucks and overpaying for guys right now might make it difficult to create a sustainable winner. That being said, there were opportunities like with Brad Hand where they could have brought him in on a one-year deal for $10 million. There was an opportunity where they could have brought Justin Wilson in, although, he's lower on my mark compared to Brad Hand and some of the other guys. The Mets may have miscalculated or did not properly appraise the market this year. And the free agents asked for a lot of money, more than maybe he anticipated. And now it doesn't look like there's a trade market for the Mets to find solutions at third base or the starting rotation or even bullpen. So unfortunately, the Mets are kind of pigeonholed right now, and they don't really have a whole lot of options remaining unless the Cubs asking price for Bryant drops, unless the Reds asking price for Eugenio Suarez or for Luis Castillo or for Sonny Gray drops. So I'm a little frustrated in that point. Mets talk with Hayden. Who are my 2021 All-Star predictions for the Mets? I'm going to say, Jacob deGrom's a lock. I'm going to go with Francisco Lindor. That seems like a safe bet. I'll also say Michael Conforto and Jeff McNeil and possibly Pete Alonso. I'll say either Alonso or McNeil, but not both. That's what I'll say. If Pete's playing the way he did his rookie year, definitely. If he's going to be slumping like he did at times in 2020, then I don't know if Pete Alonso will make the team. Same could be said for Jeff McNeil. He kind of goes in and out. When he's on, he is on fire. When he's down, he's, kind of invisible on the team. And Nimmo's a great player too. I could definitely see that happening. But, the thing with Nimmo, he's got to stay healthy. Constantly hurt. That's something he's got to figure out. And don't sleep on Dom Smith either. I just don't have him predicted as an all-star because I don't know where his playing time is coming from right now. Michael Miguel, welcome to the chat, man. Is it possible Mets get Walker, Rosenthal, trade for third base, and extend Lindor and Conforto? It's possible, but, I'm not sure what the Mets' plan is, if they're going to go over the luxury tax this year or not. I'm comfortable with them not doing it because then they can add guys at the trade deadline without going over or just barely going over. And then it allows them to extend a guy like Lindor and Conforto moving into next season, where if they go over it, great, we didn't go over it this year. So we don't have to worry about penalties right now, maybe a few years down the line, but hopefully not for next year or for 2023. Rosenthal would be a great addition. Tejon Walker would be a great addition. I really don't see the Mets doing both of those things. Maybe they do. And if that's the case, I don't think they're also going to be getting a third baseman as well. I just don't really see that happening. And like I said, sounds like the only avenue the Mets can really take to get a third baseman is via trade. It doesn't sound like the Reds or the Cubs are interested in trading their guys. And it doesn't sound like their asking price is very fair, or at least valued properly. So I don't know if a third baseman is going to be happening now at this point in the offseason. Yeah, Dom Smith is a tremendous player. Like I said, I just don't know where the playing time is coming from if there's no DH. We're going to have to stick him out in left field, in which case the outfield defense is significantly weakened. We'll have Brandon Nimmo starting in center field, who's not a great defensive center fielder. He just simply does not cover enough ground out there. And so that's why people are, oh, well, that's, why we brought in Kevin Pillar. But as I've said on this stream, Kevin Pillar's defensive numbers have been going down and down every single year. The same for Albert Almora Jr. You do have Malik Smith stashed away in AAA. I haven't looked at his defensive numbers lately. I think he's a pretty good defensive center fielder, but not much of a bat. Khalil Lee profiles more as a corner outfielder, and it doesn't seem like he really has the bat or the power numbers to for the Mets to be willing to give him a corner outfield spot. So if you put Dom Smith in left field every day, he'll definitely hit like an all-star, but it's gonna come with some growing pains in the field for sure. Eugene Kotarski, the Mets haven't missed a single first-round pick since Gavin Cecchini or whatever his name was. Yeah, Gavin Cecchini was a bust. They missed out on Corey Seager and picked Gavin Cecchini instead. I always liked that guy swinging, and I thought if he had gotten more of a chance or if he could have stayed healthy, he could have rounded out to be a pretty good utility player. But unfortunately, Cecchini is not, and I don't even think he's on the team right now. I have not heard his name in probably 2 or 3 years. So unfortunate for Gavin Cecchini. And largely Brandon Nimmo, Dom Smith. Let's take a look, actually. That's an interesting one. I do want to see who the Mets' first-round picks have been over the last 7 or 8 years. Of course, in the last 2 years, the Mets picked Brett Baty and Jared Kelenic. How could I forget that? The Mets traded him to the Mariners. He was drafted by Sandy Alderson. The very next offseason, Brodie Van Wagenen comes in, trades him to the Mariners for Edwin Diaz and for Robinson Cano, and now he's ranked the 3rd or 4th best prospect in baseball. So really, they messed that one up. Let's take a look here. Last year, Pete Crow Armstrong. The year before that, Brett Baty. Those were both by Brodie Van Wagenen. Prior to that, David Peterson, who I actually really like. I think he'll be a solid number 3 in a rotation for years to come. I really like what I saw from him. Anthony Kay, of course, Brodie Van Wagenen traded him to the Toronto Blue Jays. He's not had a ton of major league success yet, so maybe that wasn't such a terrible trade after all. Justin Dunn also went in that Jared Kelenic deal and hasn't really blossomed into a great starting pitcher yet, so not kicking myself about that one. Michael Conforto, 2014, of course, we all know about Conforto. Dom Smith in 2013, he's been great. Kevin Plawecki was a conditional draft pick that the Mets got from the Marlins when they signed Jose Reyes in free agency. He, of course, was a bust. Hasn't been with the team now for 2 years. And then before that, Gavin Cecchini, Michael Fulmer, and Brandon Nimmo. Michael Fulmer, of course, went to the Tigers in the Yoenis Cespedes trade a couple years ago. The Mets have done pretty well in their drafts over the last few years. And, say what you want about Brodie Van Wagenen. Yes, he made some very, very bad trades, but I did like the strategy that he employed in his 2 drafts, underslotting on some of the 2nd, 3rd round picks, and then going out and getting a guy like Matt Allen in the 2nd round and being able to pay him a massive contract signing bonus that he commanded. I thought that was a really good strategy. And he kind of did the same thing in 2020 with Pete Crow Armstrong, and then a few other dudes that probably wouldn't have even been drafted in the 5-round draft that they had this year. But it allowed them to sign Pete Crow Armstrong as well as JT Ginn. And the other guy, I believe, was Isaiah Green, who just got traded to the Indians for Francisco Lindor. So let's take a look here now at the chat. Yeah, a lot of talk about the Kelenic, Diaz, Robinson, Cano trade. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Forget the rest of the trade. Yep, I know. Let me know. What do you guys think? Are you happy with the Kevin Pillar signing? Do you think that it was a good deal? You know my thoughts now. I think it was a very poor judgment called by Sandy Alderson to give Kevin Pillar a major league deal. They've now guaranteed him a roster spot. If they want to get rid of him, they still have to pay his contract, his salary for this year. And they had other areas of need that I feel they probably should have addressed more so than signing Kevin Pillar, who is basically a carbon copy of Albert Almora Jr. He may actually be worse, in my opinion. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm trying to see if I have a report on the salary that he'll be making. We know it's a 1-year deal, but I don't see anything on the amount of money he'll be receiving. Like I said, if it's over $5 million, it's even worse. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible move at that point. I can't kill the Mets because it's not like they are, overpaying a guy for multiple years or doing something like the Robinson Cano trade. But at the same time, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you. And now I'm reading something on Metsmerized online where it's saying, hey, how do you replace Jason Giambi? You do it with 3 players with similar OBPs. So they're kind of using the Moneyball reference, from the movie where Billy Beane went out and instead of re-signing Jason Giambi, what they do? They couldn't find a guy like him. They brought 3 guys like him, though, that could combine the same thing. So I don't know. Maybe that's what the Mets are thinking here. In any case, I still think defensively they're not set in center field or at third base. So we'll just see what's going to happen here. It does potentially strengthen the bench. He can hit left-handed pitching pretty well. I don't really hate it because I assume he'll be taking a bench role with this team. I'm not expecting him to be the starter. Obviously, that'll be Brandon Nimmo in center field. But in any case, it is a little head scratching when there seem to be so many other areas of need that the Mets could have and should be focusing on, such as the bullpen and such as third base defense. So, head scratching is the way I would define this one. Not something that's going to make or break this team, but, probably not the best allocation of resources at this point in the offseason. DDT says another shoe has to drop here by itself. This move makes no sense. And I tend to agree with you, man. It really does not make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe there is another move looming that's going to happen. And if that's the case, I should have reserved my judgment on it. But as of right now, like you said, doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't know how signing Kevin Pillar really makes another move. I mean, unless it's that they're trading Brandon Nimmo, possibly. But I personally wouldn't be a fan of doing that. And I don't think Sandy Alderson would do that. Like I said, he drafted him in the first round in 2011. He was Sandy's first draft pick with the Mets in 2011. And he's a very good player. I mean, when he's healthy, he is an extremely good offensive player. His on-base percentage and his, OPS is just incredible, and he's a very valuable player. His weighted runs created plus is somewhere in the top 5 over the last 4 years. It's just when he's healthy. I wouldn't fan of trading him unless we're talking something about Matt Chapman. If that's the case, I guess I'll live with Kevin Pillar and Albert Almora in center field if you're telling me that we're getting Matt Chapman. But I just don't see the Athletics trading Chapman, and I don't see Sandy Alderson parting with Brandon Nimmo. But that's kind of now popping in my head. That seems to kind of make some sense. So, Mets talk with Hayden. I just want pitching for the bullpen. And that's why I'm on this stream right now, because we had so many options that have bypassed us and went to other squads, from Brad Hand and now Justin Wilson, Mark Melancon, Liam Hendricks before that. I didn't expect them to shop in the gourmet aisle after they had already brought in Trevor May. I think that was a great addition, but there were some ancillary moves that this team could have and should have made to improve the bullpen, especially with Seth Lugo just now going down with injury for at least the first month, possibly 2 months. We don't want to rush him back. He had I think they called it a loose body, which basically means he had a bone somewhere floating in his arm. Never a good sign, but better than a UCL tear. The only thing is, we know that Seth Lugo has a partially torn UCL, and that's why the Mets are so cautious with him and don't usually pitch him on back-to-back nights. So that all being said, I think that the Mets definitely need to add to their bullpen. I'm in full agreement with you on that one, Hayden. There's just not too many options left. There is Shane Green and there is Trevor Richardson, but I mean, we did hear today the Mets are still in on Richardson and talking with his camp. But we've heard that about so many guys. We've heard that about Wilson, and we heard that about Hand and so many other guys that at this point, I'm just not believing it until a deal gets done. So frustrating, a little frustrated right now. Hindsight's 2020, but if you'd asked me or if you told me that this is how the offseason was going to play out, I'd have said, you know what, then splurge on JT Realmuto. Give him his $120 million. He's the more sure thing, more proven commodity as a catcher than James McCann. At the time when they signed James McCann, they tried to sell it as, you know, the comparable players over the last couple of years, even though it's been a small sample size, but maybe he's on a upward trajectory. And if their money is, you know, as big of a disparity as it was, you know, Realmuto got $115 million. The Mets gave $40 million to McCann. Then maybe it was an okay deal. But now you're telling me that the Mets missed out on Brad Hand. They missed out on Trevor Bauer. They missed out on George Springer, Liam Hendricks, pretty much all the big free agent names. I would have just said, you know what, then get me JT Realmuto, because I know he's an excellent catcher, an excellent hitter. You know, the unicorn of baseball, if you will. But now it's just it's too late. And like I said, the Mets may not have a trade market to further improve the team. But who knows? Like we just were talking about a moment ago, maybe Sandy is concocting a trade that we don't know about. Something for Chapman or something for Chris Bryant that could be involving Brandon Nimmo. And that's why he's adding Kevin Pillar. I mean, that's the first thought that now pops to my head. Maybe that is what they are doing. And DDT, you said it, man. Maybe there is another shoe that's about to drop, and we just don't know about it yet. Yeah, you know, Eugene, we were all hyped for this offseason. I don't think it's fair to be too harsh on the Mets just because they shouldn't overpay for guys if their value doesn't match up with what their client or their agent asking for in a contract. I'm not a believer in that. You know, don't just go out and sign guys at whatever price that they're asking for. You know, you have to create a value based on what their past performance is and their future projection, and not overspend or like drunken sailors, as Steve Cohen said. But at the same time, I think that they did have some missed opportunities. And I do think that there still are some out there that, you know, they have not taken advantage of yet. And I'd like to see them change that. You know, as currently constructed, I think the Mets are still the second best team in the National League East. I think the Braves are still the better team. They still play much better defense all around the field. They have a starting rotation that's solid 1 through 5, and their bullpen was poor last year. But typically the Braves have a very strong rotation, and they usually shut the Mets down the stretch. So I still have the Braves ahead of the Mets at this moment. So I'm hoping the Mets can still pull off 1 or 2 more moves and you know, try to position themselves as the favorites in the NL East and potentially for World Series contention. But right now, I think the max wins they'll get is 95, but I think they're sitting more in like the 88 area, which may not be enough. You know, we went through this on the stream on Saturday. The National League has the Braves. They have the Mets. Then there are the Cardinals, who, in my opinion, are winning the Central. The rest of that division doesn't really scare me. The Cubs are kind of in a flux. The Pirates are obviously going to be terrible. The Brewers really didn't do much. And the Reds are going to be bad again. They've just let everybody leave their team. National League West, you have the Dodgers, obviously, who are going to be in the playoffs one way or another. You have the Padres, who could fight them for the NL West. I still think it belongs to the Dodgers. But then after that, the Diamondbacks had a very poor offseason, coming off a disappointing 2020. The Giants surprised some teams and almost made the playoffs last year, but I don't think they're ready to contend in a full regular season. And then you have the Rockies, who obviously just traded Nolan Arenado. They're going to finish in last place. So I think there's 5 teams right now that are pretty cut in stone as the playoff contenders. Anything can change, but I'd say it's anywhere between the Dodgers, the Padres, the Braves, the Cardinals, and the Mets as the top 5 teams in the National League right now. Yeah, I mean, when you compare this offseason to past, obviously it's an A++ for the Mets. Getting Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco shouldn't be overlooked. It's just that the Mets are still $30 million under the luxury tax at the moment, and they could go out and make some additions that would improve this team. and they've not done that, and they've let some opportunities pass them by, and that's where my frustration is. Not that they didn't get Bauer or Springer or Real Muto, just more so that they could have added some nice pieces to the bullpen. They could have added some more starting pitching depth or relied upon guys to put in the rotation. And I would have liked to see them do something about third base. I know there weren't a lot of avenues to fix third base. I mean, I never thought Justin Turner was leaving the Dodgers, especially not for the Mets, who cut him, specifically Sandy Alderson, some very, very publicized beef with the Mets and with Sandy Alderson when he got cut. He's an LA native. I knew he was not leaving the Dodgers. But all that being said, third base is still a question for this team. And Kevin Pillar just kind of seemed like a redundant addition in the form of Albert Almora Jr. as well, who just, both are guys that have defensive numbers in center field that are going down year by year in regression. SR, yeah, us being outbid by Seattle is fine, especially for Paxton. He isn't worth it. Yeah, I mean, Paxton got $8.5 million, though. And, if you take a look, Corey Kluber got $11 million from the Yankees, and he's only pitched 34 innings over the last 2 years. So they're really putting a pretty big bet on Corey Kluber to return from injury and get back to form. So for Paxton, who's also coming off injury, to get $8.5 million, I mean, I feel like that was one of the lower contracts that any starting pitcher has signed this offseason. And I think that would have been a contract I was comfortable in giving James Paxton, sliding him in as the fourth starting pitcher in the rotation, or fifth starting pitcher even, and all of a sudden the Mets have a really good rotation and potentially a lefty specialist in Paxton when Syndergaard returns, or even flipping him at the deadline if they didn't have any use for him anymore. Yeah, Eugene, the thing with Brad Hand, unfortunately, is that he, one, had a desire to play in Washington, D.C., and number two, wanted to be the closer with whatever team he signed with. The Mets couldn't obviously promise him playing in Washington, D.C., and as far as the closer role, I would have given it to him. I would let it be his to lose. If he wasn't performing well after the first month or two, I would have removed him from that and went back to a bullpen by committee. I personally am a believer in putting in the best possible matchup, regardless of the inning. If the eighth inning comes up where the Mets are facing Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies and Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna, I'm going to Seth Lugo if he's available, because he's the best pitcher in the Mets bullpen. I'm not going to just put, whoever is the assigned ninth inning guy in the ninth inning. I want the best possible pitcher, best possible matchup in whatever inning it is. So I would have let Brad Hand assume the closer's role and let it be his to lose. And if he performed poorly after the first month, obviously went back to whoever the hot hand and best matchup was. But that ship has sailed. He's obviously going to the Nationals on a $10 million deal. It seemed like a lot of teams were actually a little skeptical about his medicals. So, maybe there was something that a lot of other teams saw. Personally, I haven't been impressed with the Nationals offseason. I feel like they've been throwing money at people, but I don't think they've really spent that money wisely. And I'll talk about that in my new video that comes out tomorrow, where I grade every MLB team's offseason this year. For reference, the Mets tied for the best grade in the National League East. So I'm not trying to say the Mets are having a bad offseason. I'm just saying that, maybe giving Kevin Pillar a major league roster spot wasn't a good allocation of resources given the position that the Mets are in right now, as far as the rest of their roster and as far as the free agent and trade markets have played out to this point, now just 1 month before spring training begins. So I'm going to go another 5 minutes here. Give me some questions, some things to answer for you guys and discuss. I feel like I've beat the Kevin Pillar thing into oblivion at this point, and I quite frankly am just getting a headache from thinking about it. So give me some other questions and thoughts that you guys have. Mets talk with Hayden. Worst offseason goes between the Rockies or the Pirates. Yeah, they both definitely got graded pretty low. I'll give you a hint. The Pirates did better than the Rockies, though. The Rockies trading Nolan Arenado and sending $50 million in cash toward his contract, they really blew that one. I actually was a pretty good grade for the Pirates considering, because I think the Pirates wisely knew they're not ready to contend at least for the next 2 to 3 years at minimum. And they had traded away some of the attractive pieces and, are hopefully building toward a future now with some new prospect talent infused into their farm system. So I actually gave the Pirates a decent grade. It was better than the Rockies, that's for sure. SR, I don't think giving him the position, then pulling him, that he would take it well. Yeah, no, he wouldn't. I'm sure. I mean, no one was. It's an ego thing, obviously. Like, no one wants to get removed from their job or from their post. But at the end of the day, it's a results business. And if Brian Hand was given that closer role and, didn't perform well, the team's got to make changes for the best interest of the team. And if he can't accept that, then he's not a team player. He's not a guy that I want on my team anyway, at that case. What do you think it'd take to get Chapman? Yeah, man, it's going to be a haul. I don't see the A's trading him, but it probably begins with a guy like Brandon Nimmo, maybe Dom Smith. I don't think the Mets want to trade either of those guys, but that's probably what the A's begin by asking for. And then someone like Pete Crow Armstrong or Brett Beatty or even Francisco Alvarez. I mean, one of the Mets' crown jewels in their farm system. One of those top 5 guys, Ronnie Mauricio. Of all those names, Ronnie Mauricio would be the one that I'd be most willing to trade. I'm just not that big of a Mauricio guy. I don't think he's going to be a big league talent, really. I don't know why. I just get a feeling about him. I felt the same way about Amed Rosario, and that turned out to be right. Not saying I'm right on this one as well, but I just kind of don't really see the hype on Mauricio outside of the Mets organization as much as I do on a guy like Matthew Allen and Brett Beatty. So I would prefer to trade Mauricio. I think it's going to cost at least 2 high-end prospects or Brandon Nimmo / Dom Smith and a lesser-known prospect, or a guy like Mark Vientos or Thomas Sapucki plus Vientos if you're sending Nimmo or Dom Smith. But I don't see the Mets willing to do that. The Mets don't want to take away from their current team. We're obviously looking to contend right now and over the next 2 years. Trading Nimmo or Dom Smith, especially with the DH likely looming as early as even this year, I don't think it'd be a move for them to send one of those guys away, even if it means getting Matt Chapman. Thank you guys again for joining the stream. I appreciate it. If you're not already subbed to my channel, be sure to do that and leave video a like. Tomorrow I'll be dropping a new video where I give a grade for every MLB team's offseason this year. Yeah, Eugene, I don't understand how Mauricio is above Alvarez. I think Alvarez really just hasn't developed yet into a full hitter. And, I think his highest level of play is at A-ball. I think the same is said for Mauricio. I think he's just had more time in the Mets system. So evaluators and scouts have seen more of him. But yeah, I definitely, Francisco Alvarez, especially being a catcher where it's like a commodity to have a good catcher these days, he's going to be like one of the first guys that any team is asking for in a big trade for like Chris Bryant or Suarez or Luis Castillo, or in this case, Matt Chapman with the A's. Eli Littman, what's up, my man? Welcome to the stream. Appreciate you checking in. Mets Talk with Hayden. I'm going to check that out after, and everyone should go check out Mets Talk with Hayden's channel. Another Mets fan, and make some good videos. Yeah, can't touch Dom. I agree with that. The DH is coming. It would be really foolish for the Mets to trade Dom Smith now, unless we're talking about a guy like Mike Trout, and I don't think that trade proposal is coming anytime soon. So I'm keeping Dom Smith right now. Yeah, Eli, we talked about that. It seems like this could be the first move in another move for the Mets. Maybe they're signing Kevin Pillar because another move is imminent, which – to me, it sounds like in that case, they'd be trading Brandon Nimmo. I mean, that would be the only one that makes sense. But again, I never got the inclination that the Mets were interested in trading Brandon Nimmo, especially Sandy Alderson, who, again, like I've mentioned, drafted Nimmo and really values the whole money ball kind of thing of on-base percentage and, taking deep counts and, putting the ball in play, all that kind of stuff. So I don't really feel like the Mets want to trade Nimmo, but if it is for a guy like Matt Chapman and the rest of that trade makes sense, they're not also parting with one of those top 5 prospects in their system, then I guess, you'll have to roll with a platoon of Albert Almora and Kevin Pillar in center field if Matt Chapman's your third baseman. But I just really don't see that happening. I don't see the A's wanting to trade Chapman. I don't see Sandy wanting to trade Nimmo or Dom Smith. So I don't know if it's going to happen or if this really is just, a legitimate move where they actually think that Kevin Pillar can play an adequate center field for this team still. Yeah, Eugene, man, I am a traditionalist. I hate the DH in the National League. I have always been a proponent of National League baseball. There's some extra strategy, and it's not rocket science, but I always have grown up watching National League baseball, being a Mets fan. And, it's interesting to watch a manager have to think a few innings ahead, have to decide if he wants to rely on a bullpen that got taxed the day before, or if he needs a big hit. Do I pinch hit for my starting pitcher that's, got 7 solid innings, but we're only up by a run or only down by a run? It completely changes the context of every game, sometimes to the detriment to your team and sometimes to the benefit of your team. In cases where like Max Fried or Mike Soroka is shutting down the Mets for 7 innings, but then they pull him for a pinch hitter and the Mets get to their bullpen and score a couple of runs, or vice versa. Jacob deGrom comes out for a pinch hitter because the Mets can't score a run for the guy, which is always the case. And then the other team breaks through against our bullpen, or, the Mets come through with a big hit by pinch hitting for him, and then they end up, ultimately scoring some runs and winning the game. So I've always personally liked National League Baseball much more. Do I love Pete Alonso? I am in love with Pete Alonso. In love with him. I just love him. No, I'm just kidding. He's a great player. I really like Pete Alonso. Watching him his rookie year was so fun. I hope he gets back to doing that. Last year was a bit of a struggle in the first half, but he did turn it on, and he was on pace for, I think, 45 home runs, which, obviously we all would take. I don't expect him to hit 50 home runs again in a full season, but if he's hitting anywhere from 40 to 45 and, he reduces his strikeout rate and starts to get a little bit better in some other areas, like in his fielding, I'm not going to be disappointed if he only hits 40 home runs. And actually, I think Pete Alonso is actually a good defensive first baseman. He showed to be pretty good there in 2019. I think he put on some weight last year. I'm not going to lie. Just by looking at him, he looked a little bit heavier than his rookie season. And that, coupled with the fact that he was struggling at the plate, I think he brought it out with him to the field. And that's why he was such a bad defender last year. But I fully expect him to bounce back and return to form from 2019, if not even improve a little bit on that defensively in the field. So hopefully that is the case with Pete Alonso. Yeah, Eugene, I am in LA now. I am originally from New York, but I've been living in LA now for a couple of years since I came out here for school. I mentioned to you guys yesterday that this ball right here actually is the home run that Noah Syndergaard hit in 2016 at Dodger Stadium, and that's me actually with the ball. It took one bounce, landed right in front of my seat, and I got on the SMY broadcast. You can see the score bug right here, and that's me with a couple of my buddies. And probably one of my coolest moments of being a Mets fan for sure. Yeah, SR, that's a good point, man. I think that, not having Chili Davis in the dugout last year definitely hurt the Mets. I've never been a guy that judges too much about a player's or pitchers or hitters' performance based on a hitting or pitching coach, just because there's always going to be guys that fans that do like or don't like a hitting or pitching coach. But at the end of the day, it's all about whether the team likes them, whether the players like them. And it seems like the Mets players really do get along well with Chili Davis, and he can relate to them really well. So, if they like him, that's all I care about. And obviously the end results as well. He's employing a strategy or certain technique that they need to go out and use. But, at the end of the day, I definitely tend to blame or credit the players more than I do a hitting or a pitching coach. The same goes for Jeremy Hefner. I know there's a lot of people that are big fans of Hefner, but, personally for me, at the end of the day, it's kind of more so on the players and how they perform. Yeah, Michael, we don't know how much Pillar's making. I am hoping it's no more than 4 or 5 million, but that all could change my outlook depending on if there is another move looming, which, some people have brought to my attention could be the case. We haven't heard any potential trades for the Mets right now, not since last week with Chris Bryant, and then even a slight rumor about Matt Chapman, but it doesn't really sound like any of those things have legs. So at this moment, I'm not sure how much Pillar's making, but he will have a major league roster spot on this team this year, which I really did find interesting. Yeah, and Eugene, you know what I said, man? I mean, who wouldn't gain weight after that? Dude had Pete Alonso probably had a few too many congratulatory steak dinners in his offseason after making the home run rookie record in 2019. Which, you know what, man, I'm happy for him. I hope he enjoyed it, but now he's got to get back to business. He says he has slimmed down a little bit, but I definitely would like him to, go back to whatever weight he was at that year. Because he definitely looked a little thick last year, and I think it hurt him in the field, and I think coupled with his struggles at the plate, it only exacerbated the whole issue for him. Do I think the Mets have a top 5 lineup? That question comes from Maher. I'd have to take a look. I think they could have one. I just am not totally sold on James McCann. T. Davis, really good in 2019, at least the second half. 2020 was up and down for him. If he's our starting third baseman, I'm not ready to say it's a top 5 lineup. You obviously have the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Padres are probably in there as well as the White Sox, and it's got to be one other team I'm missing right now. Probably the Braves. And maybe even the Cardinals. May all 6 be better than the Mets. I'd say they're probably top 7. If McCann hits the way he did last year, if J.D. Davis hits the way he did in the second half of 2019, or they get a new third baseman, then yeah, the Mets definitely could have a top 5 lineup in Major League Baseball. But I'm going to say right now they're probably 6 or 7, 8 being probably the lowest. Yankees, and the Blue Jays. Yankees, Blue Jays, Braves, Dodgers, Cardinals, who am I missing? White Sox. Those are 6 right off the top of my head that I would probably put ahead of the Mets at this moment right now. Still some time this offseason to make some changes, and we'll see what we get out of McCann as well as J.D. Davis if he's the starting third baseman. MG, I don't think how Pilar starts either. I don't think he will. I think if Brandon Nimmo is on this team and there's not another deal coming, that Brandon Nimmo is the starting center fielder. And Pilar is more of a defensive guy in center field that comes in for late game, defensive replacement. I just am really surprised that he got a major league deal, honestly. He went this long into the offseason. It seemed like he's bounced around from after leaving the Blue Jays, went to the Giants, then he went to the Red Sox last year, then he got traded to the Rockies. Didn't get signed this offseason until right now, and I really did not expect it to be a major league deal at all. So I was pretty shocked by that. Yeah, the Blue Jays are still kind of an unproven lineup, but at the same time, like they did bring in George Springer. They brought in Marcus Semien. I'm not too big on Vlad Jr. just yet. The tools are all there, but if you look at his numbers, he really hasn't been all that impressive, honestly. I think the hype's gotten a little out of control on him. Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, they're up and coming, could still put it together. Or they probably have a lot of time to put it together, but, I do need to see more strides from those guys as well. Yeah, MG, that's my thing, man. Pilar has not really been good since 2017. His defensive numbers, as I ran through earlier in this stream, have been going down every single year in center field. I mean, like he went from, plus 15 defensive runs saved in 2015 to like plus 8 to plus 4 to -2 to -5, -10. Outs above average, same thing. He went from like 10 outs above average to 8 to 4 to 0 to -2 over the last 5 years. So, I mean, if he still was that defensive center fielder that could have 10 outs above average and be like a plus defensive 15 defensive save guy, then yeah, I get the signing definitely and make him the starting center fielder, put Brandon Nimmo in left. But that's just not the case anymore for Kevin Pilar. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Nice talk with Hayden. Appreciate you checking in, man. Not sure when the next stream is. I'm going to start doing this a little bit more often. I really do enjoy it. Got a lot of Mets thoughts on my head at all times of the day. So I'm going to try to start doing this probably 2-3 times a week. Yeah, I'm going to be doing more streams. It seems like you guys really enjoy them, and I enjoy them too. Let me know what you guys want to hear in these streams and like ask me more questions. How do you want me to go about doing it? Let me know how I can improve them so you guys enjoy it. At the end of the day, I'm making this content for you guys. I want you guys to enjoy this. So, whatever I can do to improve it, just let me know. And yeah, Hayden, will definitely collab, man. You and Andrew Acevedo, a couple other guys. I got my radar on you guys. I've seen your channels growing, and I definitely want to do some collabs with other Mets fans. By the way, I do collab with some other Mets fans currently. Mets fans only, and Mets fan from YouTube, as well as Frank About Sports and Jolly Olive. We do a live stream on Thursdays on Mets fans only YouTube channel, Thursday nights at 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern time. It just depends. Follow me on my Twitter. It's Tony Metro MLB, and I post the links to that as well as all my other baseball content on Twitter. Again, that's Tony Metro MLB. That's where you can find me on Twitter. Yeah, SR, gotta trust the process. Believe the leadership is different. All the moves meaning something. I agree, man. It wasn't like wise for the Mets to just go all in this offseason, sign Trevor Bauer and sign George Springer and, put all this money towards guys when they have a lot of extensions that are looming in the case of Francisco Lindor and Michael Conforto and potentially Noah Syndergaard. So I'm happy with the offseason. I just feel that there have been some other moves that they've let pass them by. And I also think today's move of signing Kevin Pillar to a major league contract probably wasn't a good use of the resources, given their current state. But all that being said, I still think the Mets have had a good offseason. I graded them pretty well in my new video that, again, is coming out tomorrow. I'm going to grade every MLB team's offseason from 2021. Yankees signed Robinson Chirinos. Okay. Yeah, Chirinos spent a little time in the Mets last year. More of a defensive catcher. Doesn't hit for a whole ton, but, don't think it's a big move for them and, not any big loss for the Mets. Obviously, he was still available at this point in the offseason, but, nothing wrong with that for them. We'll see if he makes the team, maybe as the backup to Gary Sanchez, who he himself has no doubt he will be gone, never to wear a Yankee uniform again. And yeah, Maher, I'm sorry, I wish I knew how to say it. It's either Maher or Maher. I will definitely be doing a lot more live streams. I appreciate you guys checking in and supporting me and my channel. I'm going to wrap this up here in about 5 minutes. Give me some more questions, some more thoughts on this signing, questions about anything in Major League Baseball, and I'm happy to answer them here in my last few minutes here. The Dodgers, do I think they will repeat? I could see it happening. Obviously, they have the best team in baseball, not just on paper, but, on the field. They proved that last year, even though I don't really count last year as a real World Series, but I definitely could see them winning it all in a full regular season. They have position by position, arguably the best player there at almost every position. They have ridiculous farm system that is always churning out new productive MLB players, and they make savvy acquisitions. Guys like Chris Taylor, Max Muncy, ones that really weren't productive or useful for other teams, and they've found a way to become great players in LA for the Dodgers. Will Trevor Story get traded? You know what, man? I don't know. I mean, the whole idea of the Rockies trading Trevor Story, or rather Nolan Arenado, is because they wanted to extend Trevor Story. But if I am Story, do I want to do a long-term deal with the Rockies after just watching the way that Arenado's contract played out with them? I'm not so sure at this point. I mean, the Rockies did the same thing with Troy Tulowitzki about 6 years ago. They gave him a mega deal. Then they had to trade him because they either weren't building around him a winning team or they just couldn't afford the contract anymore. So if I'm Trevor Story, I'm looking at both of those examples and saying, do I want to go down that same road? Now, the flip side of that is next offseason, there is a loaded shortstop free agent class. There's Francisco Lindor if he doesn't get extended. There's Javi Baez. There's Carlos Correa. Trevor Story, obviously. And then there's one more guy. Who is it? Corey Seager. So if I'm going in the next offseason as Trevor Story, you might not get as big of a contract as you might have been expecting because it's a buyer's market. There's 4 other shortstops out there that are comparable or possibly even better. So I might take the money if I'm Trevor Story. I also might look at what happened with Arenado and before him, Troy Tulowitzki, and say, I don't want to be the next one that signs this extension with the Rockies, is on a terrible team, and gets traded down the road. Mets or Cardinals, who's better? I think that they're both good at certain things and are better than the other. I think the Mets have a better starting rotation. I think that the bullpens are probably equal. I think that the lineups are very similar. But I think that the Cardinals have a much better defensive team than the Mets. So honestly, it's tough for me to say. Right now, I'd put the Mets just barely above the Cardinals. But the Mets do have some areas of concern, specifically, I think, defensively at third base, potentially in center and left field. And I think their bullpen is going to have to be addressed here before they enter the 2021. All right, guys, I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to get going. Make it a good one. What do you guys got for me? Will the Marlins get fourth place in the NL East? That is a good question. I could see the Marlins finishing in fourth place this year. The Phillies, and I'll talk more about this in my video, which comes out tomorrow, they kind of did the bare minimum this offseason. Yes, they brought back JT Realmuto. Yes, they brought back Didi Gregorius. But again, it seemed like the bare minimum. They didn't really address their bullpen outside of, I believe it was Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, and Archie Bradley. Other than that, they are entering this season with the same bullpen that last year had the worst ERA in baseball history. So to me, I don't really think the Phillies are going to compete for the National League East title. I don't know if they'll finish in last place, but I think they're going to struggle to be .500 this year. As for the Nationals, last year before the season, before we knew it was a COVID season, I predicted they would get fourth place. And the reason for that was because they went so hard in the 2019 playoffs, pushing Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg and Patrick Corbin into relief during that World Series run. That was the case. Scherzer and Strasburg basically missed the entire season. I don't think Strasburg picked up a ball. I think Scherzer made a couple of starts, but for the most part was hurt most of the year. Corbin, I think, was okay, but maybe had a couple DL stints. How did they bounce back from that? I don't think that Kyle Schwarber or Josh Bell are really big signings. I think losing Adam Eaton and Howie Kendrick, even though they're a little bit older, were two guys that, added a little more dynamic to their to that lineup. They were more bat on ball kind of guys. They had a little bit of speed. Now it kind of seems like this lineup is just home run or bust for the Nationals. And if that rotation doesn't get back to where it was in 2019, not so sure that they're going to be contending for the NL East either. I'm not sure they finished in last place. As for the Marlins, last year was a fluke. They really are not a playoff team in a full 162-game season. I think that's why they have laid low this offseason. They don't want to do anything to mortgage their future. Just taking a look at my notes here, I think the biggest move that the Marlins have made this offseason, they gave $12.5 million option to Starling Marte. They signed reliever Anthony Bass, and they traded for Adam Simber from the Indians. So other than that, they're still going to be trying to just develop that core, that young core, and try to push for a playoff run beginning in 2022. But right now, I don't think they're a playoff team. I'm going to say the Marlins probably finish in last place this year, but I don't know, man. Maybe the Marlins are going to be able to edge out the Nationals or maybe the Phillies for fourth place. As of right now, my top two rankings in the NL are definitely the Mets and the Braves. I have the Braves slightly ahead of the Mets. I think it could definitely go either way. It's going to come down to head-to-head competition. The last Mets in head-to-head matchups, and that's the problem. The Mets have got to find a way to start beating the Braves. They have failed to do that over the last few years, and it's killed them. If you go back to 2012, the Mets used to get dominated by the Washington Nationals, who reigned supreme in the NL East up until 2015, when the Mets finally won and that's because they took care of business against the Nationals, and they started beating them in those head-to-head games, gaining a game on them every single time in the standings. So if the Mets can find a way to do that against the Braves this year, I definitely think it's their division for the taking. If they continue to struggle against them, though, there's no way they can beat the Braves. What's the next move, Chapman, Bryant, or Suarez? Honestly, man, I don't think any of them are going to happen. If I had to pick one, obviously I'm going with Matt Chapman. He's the best of that group. He's going to cost the most, though. I think next would be Bryant, and I've made it clear I'm really not a big fan of Eugenio Suarez. I don't think his numbers will be nerfed at Citi Field. I don't think he's going to be able to do the same power numbers that he does at Great American Ballpark. Citi Field is not friendly to right-handed power hitters for the most part. Asking price for him is extremely high. Chris Bryant, meanwhile, has that star pedigree, even though he hasn't played like it over the last few years. The other attractive thing about it is that he is a rental, so the Mets are non-committal to him after this year. If he walks in free agency next year, that's fine. The Mets get a conditional draft pick from whatever team he signs with, maybe even recoup the same or more value that they'd be trading to the Cubs to acquire him in a trade this year. Is Trevor Bauer a top 5 pitcher? I don't know, man. Like over the last 3 years, like the numbers show that he has been. He's just a little inconsistent. He had a bad second half with Cincinnati in 2019 when he got traded. Last year had an incredible season. Obviously, won the Cy Young, 1.67 ERA, something like that. I just don't know. Is he the 2018 Bauer that was tremendous? Is he the 2019 Bauer whose ERA was over 4, or the 2020 Cy Young Bauer? I just really can't make it out. His metrics indicate that he has some really nasty stuff. Would have loved for him to be on the Mets. I think it would have put them over the top as the team to beat in the NL East. But obviously he's going to the Dodgers now, and they're going to be nearly unstoppable if he pitches like a top 5 pitcher in Major League Baseball. So that's going to be it for me, guys. I appreciate you guys checking in. If you're not subbed to the channel, be sure to do so. You'll be seeing my new video tomorrow where I rank every single team's offseason this year. I give them a grade. So be sure to be on the lookout for that and leave this stream a like. Let me know in the comments what you guys would like to see in future streams. I want to make sure I'm making content that you guys enjoy. At the end of the day, it's about you guys. Thank you so much for checking in, and I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow in my new video. Take care.